Hello, everybody. How you doing? You hear me okay? All right. Thanks to Point 32 Health for bringing all this together. Really such a fun weekend, obviously, but today is a great way to dive into what this is all about. Joan, Paulette, thank you so much for doing this today. Joan, I just want to start kind of from 30,000 feet with you, just about running in general. You've run all your life, and you've run at a level that most of us can only dream of. And yet at its core, running, I think, affects us all the same, right? The exercise, the mental health, everything that goes in it. Why is running important to you?
Well, thank you, TC. Running is important to me because it's been such a part of my life for so long. I barely can remember life without running. I grew up with 3 brothers, so it was always survival of the fittest. And I was running to them, asking for help, or running away from them because I had taunted them somehow. So, and running is the basis of all activity, but I think most importantly, running is accessible and affordable. And there's no reason why not give it a try. Why not to give it a try? And I think what's great about running is that you can squeeze it into a busy day, either before or after work or community commitments or family obligations or whatever it might be. There's always time to run. And I remember as a young mother or having a travel schedule that didn't quit, I would always sort of run toward the airport or run in the direction of a family trip, and my husband would pick me up at whatever point I got to. And that was incentive for speed work. So running is just omnipresent, I think, in the communities today, and I think it's building momentum, which is a time when there's so many challenges in life, and mental health is such a large part of the challenging parts of this world. Why not?
Perfect. And I start there because Paulette, when we were talking before, grab your microphone here. Paulette, you were saying you really do not enjoy speaking to a group of people.
Not at all.
But when you heard Joan was doing this, you absolutely wanted to be a part of this. And like I said before, Joan has accomplished things in the running world that you and I could only dream of. And yet, at its core, you are going to go out Monday and try to do what she did, your best, and run. Talk about why it's been important to you. You've been running most of your life. You're a kindergarten, first grade teacher. You retired last year, but you told us that part of your sanity, part of your ability to teach well, was by having time alone, running with friends and getting away. Why is running important to you?
Well, I think one of the most important things is that I lack coordination. So I know I can put one foot in front of the other. So that's the important thing. And the thing about my students is that they always kept me honest. So when I just ran a half marathon in Key West, I was running and training with them. We made a bar graph, and they were like, "Did you run yesterday? How far did you go?" "Oh, we can only color in 8 blocks today." So they kept me honest, and again, it's just the community of runners is what really has kept me going. I love my running friends, and it's just fun.
And so you understand, Paulette was chosen because of her application to run as part of this team. And what, you call yourself the unicorn runner? Is that right? Is that what you called it on that?
Well, that's what they call me.
That's what they called you? Because teaching kindergarten and first grade, there were unicorns and rainbows everywhere, but you had said to keep up with these kids, you had to stay in shape.
Right.
And you guys got together. Tell me about your running group and how early, and hold the mic right up. But tell me about your running group.
My running group, my husband named the Go-Go Girls because we would meet at 5:10 in the morning every day. We all had kids and jobs, and so we would just run our 4 or 5 mile loop. And, we would solve the world's problems. We had marriages. We survived cancer, divorce, so many things. And it was just the most wonderful experience, and lovely people.
Joan, you were so inspirational to so many runners over the years. And I think, Dave McGilvray is a friend of mine. And people like you and Dave, they inspire us to run, even though we'll never compete for a first place finish in anything. This is my problem now that I'm going down. But when you hear stories like that, the importance of running to average people, What does that mean to you? What does it mean that other people understand? Even though we can't compete for a championship per se, that running matters to so many people in this room and so many people in the world.
I think running matters to an increasingly larger and larger population of people, again, because it's affordable and accessible. And like Paulette's friends keep her honest, and her colleagues in education keep her honest, my family and friends have kept me honest. So when I came through the tunnel in LA 40 years ago, if you can believe that, I thought, am I big enough to carry the mantle that comes with an Olympic medal? And I quickly decided in the darkness of the tunnel leading into the Coliseum that if I wasn't, I'd figure it out darn fast. And it's my family and my friends who've kept me honest, and I promised at that point to give back to a sport and a community that had given so much to me, and that led to the founding of the Beach to Beacon 10K in my hometown of Cape Elizabeth, Maine, and that was a way of giving back. And it's great to watch the elite runners from around the world come in, but my favorite part of the race is waiting there for the back of the pack finishers to come in, because they're the ones that might have had self-doubt and asked themselves, am I capable of covering 10 kilometers? And they find out that they are, and you see the smiles and the joy and the jubilance on their faces as they cross that line it's just so heartwarming. And I have more tears watching them come in than I do with the elite runners. And so it's an all-inclusive. And this time, in this world when inclusivity matters and diversity matters, you're not going to find a greater spread of all of those things than you are anywhere else except in the sport of running.
Love that. If you look around this room, look around this expo, you talk about diversity, you talk about people coming from around the world to Boston to be part of this special event. And again, just, if you don't know, you held the Boston American women's record. I think 28 years was the fastest time. So Boston was special to Joan. Joan was special to us in Boston. And we're going to have you ask some questions as well. We're not waiting until the end. It's not going to be a 10 minutes. So start thinking of questions. We're going to move the mic in a minute, but I want to ask you first, both of you. Paulette, we'll start with you. Why is Boston important? You've run other marathons.
Yes.
You didn't know if you were going to run another marathon, but you got the chance to run Boston, and you said, I need to run Boston. Why is Boston special?
I've been watching the Boston Marathon as a spectator forever. I grew up 7 miles outside of Boston, and I was just in awe of the runners. The Kenyans are amazing people. We love seeing the Americans win. And so, I just hoped that someday I would be able to do it, but never thought that this would actually happen for me. The other marathons were wonderful and it just great experiences, but this is Boston, and this is the most amazing one, I think.
Well, Paulette, dreams do come true, and you're living the dream right now, as are many of the people out there. May I just ask a question quickly, TC? How many of you are running your first Boston in the audience? You're not alone. You're not alone.
Awesome.
And you're never alone in the sport of running, and that's the most important thing. There's always somebody out there who has a story that's more inspiring than yours, and that's what keeps me going in this sport.
It's such a great point. I was talking to someone who's running for the first time over the weekend. Our producer, Amy Johnson at Nesson, is running her first marathon, her first Boston. And I was asking her, do you listen to music? And she goes, I always listen to music when I run, but not Boston. Because there's so much energy. There is so much to take in as you run. So make sure you enjoy the experience. Don't just go out there worrying about your time. Enjoy this. Soak it in. As we get to the audience questions, Joan, I do want to ask you. You've had so much success globally in running. The marathon you already talked about. Chicago, you held that record for 32 years. You can go to any race probably and talk about your connection to it. But why Boston? Why? I mean, you're Maine to the core. Cape Elizabeth, Bowdoin, we know all that. New England means a lot to you. But what makes Boston special to you?
I came to Boston for the first time in 1979, sight unseen. And I know many of you probably weren't born in 1979. I didn't have a clue what I was doing or where I was going. I had always run a 5-mile race at what was the Boys Club of Portland, Maine on Patriots Day. It's now the Boys and Girls Club, but it was the Boys Club back then. And I felt like I was joining a community of men back then, but they were always very supportive. And when I used to pass some of the guys in my early days, they would look at me and say, what the heck is a girl doing passing me? And so our sport has really evolved because I think the numbers on the women's side are now larger than they are on the men's side. And I remember being embarrassed to be seen running in my early days, so I'd always walk when a car passed me by. And I did most of my running in an abandoned Army post called Fort Williams. And now that's the finish line of the Beach to Beacon, so what comes around goes around. But Boston was always out there. And I just wondered what it was all about, and I came down. I barely made it to the starting line. I had to bushwhack through the bushes because we didn't leave ourselves enough time. I was going out with a group of friends, and you know, how many of you have that reoccurring nightmare that you don't get to the starting line on time? Come on, be honest. You know, we all share a lot in common no matter what our ability is in the sport. And that was almost a dream come true. Not the dream that's coming true for Paulette, but a dream that comes hopefully not true for many of us. But, you know, and Paulette asked me earlier, is it okay to be nervous? If you're not feeling a hint of nervousness getting to the line on Monday, then take yourself out of the race. You have to have a little bit of nervousness. You have to be able to control the nervousness, but it's commonplace amongst runners at every level. So don't let that bother you. Take that off your list, and take what is the weather going to do off your list as well. You can't do anything about the weather, but you can only do something about what you're feeling. And you've all prepared amply to get to the starting line. Don't second guess your training. Don't test your fitness in the next 2 days, and just know that you've done what was necessary to get you to that starting line.
That's perfect. And we want to have you ask questions. You got a great opportunity, one of the most accomplished runners in history with a first-timer, and we want to play off your questions, so let's get to it. And do wait for the mic, as she did. Thank you. You go ahead.
Hello, good morning. My name is Jody Tatiana Charles, and Kathy and I met 10 years ago, and we did our marathon together. Now we're doing the Abbotts when we're traveling around the world. But we are aging, and so going through menopause, going through people are worried about their knees, or people are worrying about shin splints, but lower back is happening. Your body starts changing from the time 10 years ago when we met to now, and then we have a lot more races to do. What's your best advice in regards of, as your body has changed throughout the years, because you've been running for quite some time, you're still running, you look amazing. Give us more hints.
Oh, I thought you were going to toss it to Paulette. Paulette, do you want to take that first, and I'll follow up?
Well, I have a team now, which I've never had before. I have a physical therapist, I have a massage therapist, I have my family, and that's what it's all about. I mean, you just keep going. You have to just kind of say, yeah, my back's a little cranky today, but it'll be okay once I start. I'm banking on that for Monday.
So when I started running, my first year in high school was 1972, and as you all know, that's when Title IX legislation became law. And so opportunity wasn't available to me. And in the Olympics, the longest distance at that time was the 1,500 meters. So because the so-called experts in sport thought if a woman ran more than a mile, she'd do bodily harm and never be able to bear children. Well, 150,000 mile, 2 children and 2 grandchildren later, I'm still at it and loving it just as much as I did back then. And I'll tell this story in mixed company, because I know many of you out there must be mothers and fathers as well. But as I said, we have 2 children, and one day, I'm an avid gardener. I like to feel the good earth. It grounds me, and I just love being out there. And by the way, I never listen to music when I'm out running. That's my air time. That's my productive thinking time. It's time to air it out. I'm unplugged, so to speak. Love Eric Clapton. But anyway, so I'm out in the garden, and I'm with our infant son and our 2-year-old, 2.5-year-old daughter, and our daughter's out there with her baby carriage and her babies, and she said, "Mom, do you mind watching my babies while I go for a run?" And I said, "Go for it, Abby, just go." And because I know what it's like when I ask my family, "Can I get out for a run?" And she ran around the house, and she came back. She said, "Mom, I have a meeting to attend. Do you mind watching my babies a bit longer?" And I said, "No problem. Go to your meeting." She said, "Mom, I hate to ask you this, but I'd love to run to the grocery store, run a few errands, and then we can go to the playground or the beach or wherever." And I said, "Go for it." And she came back around. She said, "Mom, I'm not going to run anymore." And I knew what she was going to say. Who can tell me what she was going to say? What mother out there can say what she was going to say? Time? Time. Time is the answer. And I said, if she says to me, it takes too much time away from my babies, I am going to end my career right there, because it's a mother's guilt, right? How many of us have that mother's guilt? She said, "Mom, I don't know if I told you this, but I'm nursing these babies, and my boobs are killing me." So I just breathed the biggest sigh of relief, and now we enjoy the sport together. It's such a gift. And so mother's guilt is okay, but the key here is balance in one's life. In running, we have to balance the mind, the body, and the spirit. And if you can keep or maintain a balance in your lives, running will continue.
I love that. Follow up real quick before we get our next question. The time issue and you know, managing that time with family, with loved ones, with spouses. Paulette, we were talking a little before. You have a team now, but they're sacrificing a little bit too to help you. Talk a little bit about that, about the sort of the discussions and the negotiations at times to make sure you're finding the time to run.
Well, that's why the Go-Go's ran at 5:10 in the morning, because the kids were home asleep and we could get our runs in. But my family has just been wonderful. They've helped me so much. My boys always run with me. My daughter and I have done bar together, and you know that's quite an interesting thing. I think the people at bar thought I was going to die, and so I had to sign all these waivers and to just even try it. It was wonderful, and I was able to do all the push-ups. But you know, when I applied for this honor to run Boston with the .32 people, I looked at my husband and I said, "Can we do one more?" Because he's an integral part of my training and my life. So, thank you, honey.
And I think the beauty of it is where maybe it begins by asking for time from family, you get to share that success. And Joan, I said you're a role model and inspiration for so many of us, but to hear your daughter talk about what you meant to her, right? That time away was actually time that you inspired her and many of us. What does that mean to you?
Well, it's interesting that Paulette's running group call themselves the Go-Go Girls. Our granddaughter calls me Whoa Whoa. Like, will you slow your life down a bit? So it's interesting, and it's a gift when a family supports your healthy habit.
Beautiful.
It's a real gift, because there's a lot of selfishness in running, and to have a selfless family means a great deal to me as well.
It's such a great point. It's a healthy habit. You're taking time away. It's not because you're going out with friends or golfing or, you know, you're doing something that means nothing wrong with golfing. I golf. Do we have a question over here? Did I see a hand? Oh, we have any questions? Right there behind the camera, up front as well. There's one there. Raise your hand so he sees. Thank you.
So thank you. I've done 8 marathons, including Boston, and I just wanted to thank you for what you've done for women's running, because it's pretty amazing. I'm not always at the beginning of the pack. I'm actually toward the end. I'm one of those, but it's been pretty amazing. So my question for you, and you know, like I listened to some of the recordings as part of my training, and I still want to continue to do more marathons. How do you address getting slower? Because that's hard for me. I was a lot faster even just a few years ago. So how do you address being slower and not injure yourself when you're training?
If you didn't hear the question, how do you address being slower? I feel like we're venturing into life lessons here, not just running lessons. I'm slower in everything. But on the course, how have you sort of adapted to that, Joan?
So I was just able to achieve my Abbott World Marathon Major 6 star. It wasn't fast and it wasn't pretty, but it was a goal. So we all have to keep our goals in mind all the time. And I've used storytelling as a way to motivate myself throughout my career. Well, actually, it started in 2008 here at the Olympic trials at the age of 50, and that was going to be my last marathon, and I was going to try to run a sub 250 at the age of 50 at an Olympic trials where I started my career. I thought it appropriate to end my career well. Anyway, I was met at the finish line by the 3 Olympic qualifiers, having achieved my time, which included Dina Castor, a dear friend of mine, and walked off into the sunset. And then the next year, it was Mary Wittenberg from the New York Roadrunners asking me if I'd come and celebrate their 40th anniversary with the 25th anniversary of my Olympic win. And I said, well, that tells a story. And the next year, it was Chicago, and the date was 10-10-10, and who could pass up those dates? And that was the 30th anniversary of my fastest time, I think. And so that told the story. And then it was the Athens Marathon in the 25th, 100th year of the Battle of Marathon. I said, any marathoner needs to get over there and tell that story. So that's how I've motivated myself. And then it was the Abbott 6 stars. And my daughter achieved her 6 star last year, and I was injured with an ankle and couldn't run for a couple months. But it was unfinished business, so I wanted to go back and get that. And I ran about 3 minutes slower than I did when I set, the record here in Boston. And it was just like, okay, this is where I am now. You can't look at the past. You can only look forward in our sport. Cross training is a huge piece of my training now. I do a lot of Nordic skiing in the winter, alpine too, but the Nordic really develops my upper body, and runners have stronger legs than arms in most cases. So you become more efficient when your upper body matches the strengths of your lower body. So I do a lot of that. I do a lot of gardening. I do a lot of cycling, both outdoors and indoors. I chase the leaderboard. I only work out for a half hour on the exercise bike, but if there's any guy over 50, and I'm on the other side of 65 going up north, and any woman 40 or younger, 40 or over, I just chase them down as best I can. And that keeps me in really good shape. So cross training is, and I do the cold water swimming, not just the plunge, the swimming. And sans wetsuit, like I have to feel the good earth in the garden, I have to feel the cold water in the ocean. And it gets pretty cold in the Gulf of Maine in the winter, as you know.
And in the summer, by the way, it's really year-round. Paulette, how about you? Over time, how have you adapted your expectations, your training, everything that goes into continuing to run?
I do a boot camp 3 times a week with people who are much younger than me. They're in their 30s, and I look at them and say, all right, I can do this. And I don't do it as beautifully as they do, but I get it done. And I agree, the weights are very important for upper body strength. So, and just, I'd like to bike also. Just keep moving.
You do it as beautiful as the beauty's in the eye of the beholder, so don't worry about that. Did we have a question over here? I saw someone else with a hand up earlier. Nope. Any questions over here? There you go, back there.
Thank you so much for this information you're providing. It's always helpful to come and get one new piece of information that helps you on that next run. My question is in regard to the affordability of running. And when I began running 20, 30 years ago, it was far more affordable. You could go out and find a $10, $15 5K to try yourself on. But for those of us who can't afford the Boston Marathon, who can't afford New York, who can't afford the travel, what do you recommend for people to find really competitive local races, and even in terms of clothing, shoes, etc.? How do you stay affordable, or how do you get started in running on a limited budget?
That's a really, really good question. You know, as I said, inclusivity is really an important part of today's society, and we have to get as many people into our sport as we can. There are a lot of nonprofits out there now in the running community that might be able to help out with entrance fees, but I think it's something that the race directors, and we struggle with it all the time at the Beach to Beacon. We don't want to exclude anybody because they can't afford the race, but you know, costs are going up everywhere and sponsorships become more and more challenging. So the fact that Point 32 Health is here today, opening a 5K to as many people who can think about putting one foot in front of the other is really crucial because it's a doable distance for almost everybody. I tell people all the time they don't have to run marathons to be a runner. And when somebody tells me at a dual marathon, half marathon event, I'm only running the half, I said, you are running the half. You're not only running the half. But your question is really good and something that needs to be discussed at a higher level amongst the biggest road races and marathons in the world. You know, travel alone, hotels alone, it all adds up. And thank you for that question, and I'm going to let my people I work with hear that and know about that. Thank you.
Thank you. It's a great question. Thank you for saying half marathons are okay, because that's all I do. So I only run half marathons, and trust me, if you see me run, it is only. But I do like that we can use that to launch for a second. Paulette is running this. Paulette, you're running with Point 32.
Yes.
They made it. It was basically an essay, right? You had to pitch your story and get chosen because you wouldn't have the time or the bandwidth to get a charity bib and raise $25,000. But you sort of told your story to Point 32, and they chose you. Tell us a little about that process and how it all came together.
Well, I have a friend who knows that I've always wanted to do Boston, and she sent me the application and said, I thought you might be interested in this. And I saw it and said, all right, I guess I'll have to apply for this. And so I told about how, you know, my friends, the Go-Go Girls, and I ran, and we had a pack of coyotes come out at us one morning and screamed and thought I was dead that day. But I told the stories that we all have as runners of things we've seen and things we've done along the way. And typically the marathons that I've done with friends because they're hitting a milestone in age. And, you know, most people go out to dinner and drink, and, you know, they wanted to run a marathon, so I had to join them. But the first one I did was the most important one because I had a student in my class who had leukemia, and I ran the team in training marathon in San Diego for him. And he was the most amazing little boy, and he's still alive because of all the wonderful research that has been done through this lovely organization. And so, you know, I told Point 32 my story about how I enjoy running and the Go-Go's and this wonderful little boy, and they picked me. I can't believe they did. I thought maybe I was the only one who applied.
That's a great story. I do have to ask the follow-up question. Was that morning run with the Coyotes one of your faster paces?
Oh, you know it.
So for those of you first-timers, Monday, just imagine you're being chased by a pack of coyotes, and you'll do just fine. Any other questions? Go ahead, Joan.
I just have a question, may I?
Yes, absolutely.
How many running teachers do we have in the audience? Thank you for your service. Thank you. That's a thankless job often, and you really reach out and support the next generation, which is so important. Thank you.
I also know that Paulette's family is out here somewhere. Where's Paulette's family?
Yay!
Now, I know she told you you are not allowed to ask a question, but it's okay. We want the good stuff here. You got a question? There you go. He's raising it. Let's go. Sorry, Paulette. You didn't know this was coming.
Thanks, Tom. Colin here, Paulette's son. I run for the feeling after. So, Joan, what's the feeling of the wins or even the training runs? I love the feeling of the accomplishment and even the mental high for a few days or a day.
That's a great question. It's all about the endorphins. It's all about the endorphin rush. It's a feeling of fait accompli. You've set your sights on something, you've gone after it, and you've completed the task. And I don't like to toot my horn, but one of my biggest claims in the sport is that I've never dropped out of a race. And I went to Tokyo, and you should drop out of a race if you're challenging your health and personal wellness and well-being. But I remember running Chicago one year, and I felt like the victim of a drive-by shooting. I had a bullet in my calf, and it was later in the race, and I knew the children were watching at home. And I always say, finish what you start. And I just had to go there and finish. But it's all about goal setting and setting your sights on something. If we don't have goals, how can we really live a fulfilling life? And it can be in the sports arena, it can be in the world of theater or music or art or whatever it is. But the most important thing for every individual to have is passion in the heart. And whatever your passion, set your goals and go for it and have a fulfilled life. And as I said, running is a panacea for so much.
Love that. I think we had a question right here behind the camera. We'll get you after.
Thank you for having this panel. It's so important. And I'm a masters athlete. I coach masters athletes. So what I would love to know from you ladies is, as you're training for these races, how has your tipping point changed as far as your training and mileage, say speed work or number of miles? How have you had to adjust that with time?
Well, one thing that has happened in my life is that lots of my friends have stopped running, unfortunately. And so I've had to find new friends that do run, and maybe they're not running 26 miles with me, but a number of my friends have said, I'll do 5 with you today. So I'll run the 5 with them and then, continue for 10 more, unfortunately. But that is very, very helpful to me, to just know that there are people out there with me, and I run on a bike path a lot, and I'll see like friends or people who I just run by every time, and it's like, hey, how are you doing? Great today. So it's just having the running community is the best community, and I just love everybody.
I think I run, most of my mileage is on my own because, as I said, it's a time to air it out and to think and to prioritize. But there are those days when I need somebody by my side. I need somebody to get me out the door and keep me going. So those of you who are relatively new runners, if you don't have a running partner or buddy, find one, because there are days when you'll need that person by your side. And the extent of my speed work really is when I hear a car from behind, I try to beat it to a certain landmark. And the other form of speed training is painting myself into a corner with what we talked about earlier, time. And if you get involved with something else, or it's one more email, or it's one more project, and then your time decreases and decreases, and you want to get those 5 miles in or whatever it is, you run faster so that you stay on schedule. I mean, I'm very holistic with my training. I don't use a lot of technology. I run the way I feel. I run my own race, and that's always been, and hopefully it will continue to be.
That's awesome. I love that. We have a question up here. It's coming around.
Hi. Every time somebody asked a question, it was something that I was intending on asking as well about aging and running. And I guess the one that's coming to mind now is, how is it that as you've aged as runners, in my experience, I've had to adjust a lot of my diet in the build towards the marathon. I've had to make a lot of changes in what my nutrition is, not just in the build, but also during the race. So what have been the changes that you've gone through in these moments, these times as you've run? 16 marathons later, it's something for me that's been huge.
Congratulations on 16. Nutrition, it's a great question. How has it changed for you?
Well, I used to be able to eat anything I wanted and be able to go out and run forever, but that unfortunately has changed as time has passed. I don't really eat too much meat, and I eat seafood, which I absolutely love, and vegetables, and I do like my ice cream, but you can't run that during the marathon. So after the marathon, I have a Ben & Jerry's in my freezer, and I will enjoy it.
Yep. Chocolate milkshake for me.
So Paulette mentioned she likes seafood. I tell people I'm on a seafood diet. I see food and I eat it. And just like I practice balance in my life, I try to practice nutrition as well, or balanced nutrition. My mother always said growing up, if you have a colorful plate, you're getting all the vitamins and minerals you need, and I think there's a lot of truth to that. I don't use a lot of supplements because I think I have a pretty well-balanced diet, and I like to get my calories through whole food rather than additives and things like that. But I think the most important thing is, especially for you first-time marathoners out there, you're going to go through the expo and you're going to see lots of different supplements and energy drinks and bars, et cetera, et cetera. Do not try anything new in the last couple of days leading up to Monday. Go with what's tried and true because it can backfire on you. Trust me.
I think that's such great advice. We do have a question over here, and I've run a couple half marathons, and I do think what you said is so true. The first time I ever ran one is just trust what you have done to get to this point. You're here. You're ready to go. Now's not the time to try anything wild or new.
Will you run with me?
Will I run with you?
Run with me.
Your pace or mine?
Mine.
What's your pace? Can I keep up?
4:35-ish.
I have a lot of obligations on race day. Otherwise, I would. Good luck to you.
Good luck
You can
on
do it.
Monday.
Just find somebody running next to you because I guarantee you they'll have a story that'll inspire you. And also remember, for you first-time marathoners, mentally, and the mental component of marathoning is huge. It's easier to pass people at the finish line than it is to be passed. So patience in the sport of marathoning is a true virtue. The mental component is huge. Before the Olympics, I told my coach, whoever wants this race the most is going to win. And it was also helpful being an underdog to the late, great Greta Weitz and her teammate Ingrid Christensen.
Do you always do that in your early races, the mental part of it, like the passing, the when to pass, all of that? Take us through a little of that. Like how have you sort of harnessed that over the years and changed it and finessed it and learned from it?
Well, it's very important to be a teammate, like Paulette is with the Go-Go Girls, but at the same time, you have to run your own race. So in the Olympics in LA, the pack was moving slower than I wanted to be moving, but I did not want to lead the race, but I wasn't running very efficiently, and a little voice went off in my head like it did in the tunnel and said, you've got to get out there and run your own race. You can't run their race. You have to run your own race. And I've stuck by that motto many a time, and it's helpful. You need to find your own space and find your zen, so to speak, and just go with it.
That's the unwritten rule with the Go-Go's. All bets are off on race day. You run your race, and we'll see you at the end.
Yeah.
So it's all friendship until you actually toe the line. I see.
Yeah, and that's a good point. I tell people all the time. How many of you in the audience are planning to run with somebody on Monday? Wow. Oh, I'm so impressed. Good for you. Meet on the other side of the finish line, because if you're having a great day and your buddy isn't, it is so hard to run somebody else's race, and vice versa. You want to run your own race and you want to celebrate together on the other side of the finish line.
Actually, a story I tell, running a half marathon once, I ran with a friend. And we're like a mile into it, and I'm not feeling it. I'm dragging. And I look at him, and I say, listen, if I'm slowing you down, go ahead. And he takes off. Like, I'm not even finished the offer, and he's gone. And I'm like, well, you could have been a little more gracious than that, but that's fine. We're probably 10 miles into it, and I see him. He's slowing way down. And it was my fastest half because I absolutely tracked him down, blew by him at the end. It was like, I was so upset that he took off so quickly that's what got me going for the rest of the run. So whatever it takes, right, to get you through the day. We got time for a couple more. We got one over here.
Joni, Paulette, congratulations on retiring. From
Thank
teaching,
you.
I did it last year. It feels great, doesn't it? I want to return to something that's near and dear to my heart. Joni, you talked about cross-training. As we get older, I'm entering the 70-plus age group next year. And I've always used cross-training, even since my younger competitive years. How do you think it'll affect somebody? And there are two parts to this. One is doing less running and supplementing it with cross-training. The lack of security, because those of us who started running in the 60s were real high mileage nuts. And I remember going and running less, but running better and thought, is this a coincidence? Now, as I look around the crowd here, there's enough white hairs. How do you think you could get somebody involved in cross-training that will help them reduce injuries and strengthen the weaker parts of their running form or whatever, and ask them to do less running and to go a little easier on the body? And I just bring it up now because you brought it up, but Parker Valby, who just ran 30:52 in her first 10K, California, woman who runs for Florida, and has broken 2 NCAA records already this winter, is a big cross trainer. And all the threads are, oh my God, how can she do this? And must be drugs or something. It's not. She's a very, very strong runner. Do you think it can help those of us who are in here, especially as we get older, to keep going and stay away from injuries?
Do you want to? That's another good question. Boy, you are getting A pluses with your questions out there today. It's hard to let go of the mileage. It's really hard to let go of the mileage. And I have to tell you, when I was after my Abbott 6-star in Tokyo, there was a lot of self-doubt there. And I tell people, let it go, let it go. You know what you've done to get to the starting line. Believe in yourself, believe in your training. But I'll tell you, I was running a quarter of the amount of mileage I normally run. I had run only one 20-mile run in a whole year. And I went to Tokyo, and I couldn't get the fact that I used to look 3 months out from the start of the marathon date. I would do one long 20-mile run. I'd do one medium-long run of 13 to 16, and I'd do some sort of speed work or interval work. And I had none of that. And again, I go back to the cycling. I go back to the swimming. I go back to the skiing. I go back to the deposits in the bank after all those years of running. And I just believed that I could do it. And I ran that race on a wing and a prayer, just like I ran the Olympic trials in 1984, 17 days after arthroscopic knee surgery. And let it go. Let it go. And believe in what you've done to get to the starting line and all the years for you veterans out here. And I'll tell you, the women who are really motivating me today are the 40 to 60-year-old women who pick up running because they're past the child rearing stages. They were athletic in their college or high school days. They want to stay fit. And these women are breaking records left and right. And it's not only the young upcoming generation of runners, but it's also the older gen. So I feel like I'm in the middle of the sandwich, and it's a nice place to be.
I'll just say one thing. I have given myself permission to walk if I need to walk during anything. Any race, if I just have to stop and take a couple of steps and be slow for a while, I'm okay with that.
Doug Flutie, the great quarterback, ran I think it was his first Boston. I was telling him, how are you going to train? He goes, well, here's how I'm approaching it. I know I can run 3 miles without a lot of work. So I'm going to run 3 miles, then walk till I've got myself together. Then I'm going to run 3 miles again. And he looked at Boston as a series of 3-mile runs. I don't know if that works for everybody, but it was actually kind of an interesting mental approach, right? Like I always know I can run the next 3 miles. If I need to slow down after that and regroup, then I'm going to run another 3 miles. And it went great. It went great for him.
That's a good point, TC. If you think of 26.2 as your race distance, it sometimes seems very daunting. So I break it up. Like I'm going out for a 10-mile run, which is commonplace in most marathoners' training. So I run 10 miles. Okay, it's time to gear up for a 10K. So now I've got 16 miles behind me. And then I break up the last 10 however I feel at that moment. But again, it's easier to pass people at the end than it is at the finish. And you don't look back in the marathon. You only look forward.
And I say I run in 10-minute increments, and I can do anything for 10 minutes.
Question over here.
All right, Joan, congratulations on earning the 6-star star in Tokyo. Actually, I just completed Tokyo myself and just wanted to say congratulations.
Congratulations. It's a lot bigger than the gold medal, I'll tell you that.
Yeah, and I'm running my 6-star this marathon Monday. So hopefully
for you.
Get to do that as well.
Congratulations and good luck Monday.
Thank you. So if there was one thing you want to say, Sammy, you're running your 6th marathon, 6-star, what is the one thing that I need to keep? I know you told me one time, you said keep breathing, remember to breathe. Would that be the same advice?
Yeah, if you're breathing at the end of the race, you're in a good place. You can go on to the next whatever it is you want to do with your life and goal setting.
All right. Well, thank you very much.
Good luck out there.
Good
Have
luck
a
and
great
congratulations.
Day. And you're going to have a lot of people cheering you on knowing you're going for that 6-star.
Going to be amazing. All right, we're going to wrap it up on this. I have everybody asking questions, a lot of great questions for Joan. Paulette, you're sitting next to Joan Benoit Samuelson. You get a question here at the end. What would you like to ask Joan before you run on Monday?
Will you run with me? Have you got 6 hours, Joan?
The fact of the matter is you're going to have that medal around your neck at the end of the day, and that's so important for everybody's running for a different. How many of you are raising money for charities? How many of you are going after PRs? How many of you are running in somebody's memory or honor? We're all out there for different reasons, but the important thing is we're all out there together, and we're doing it. So that one last tip. Boston is an undulating course. I love that kind of terrain. It could be warm. Make sure you're well hydrated. Make sure you don't try anything new with your diet. It's a good idea to rub something all over your feet, like a petroleum jelly or whatever, to keep from blistering. If you feel a blister coming, move that portion of your foot around in your shoe. Get on top of your feet, under your feet, between your toes. Cover your feet so they glide. They almost feel slippery in your socks. And it's the kind of course where you have to dig in with your toes and then you have to lift up with your heels. So just cover that.
There you
You
go.
might try it walking around tomorrow and not try anything new on race day.
Don't try anything new Monday.
But good luck to all of you.
Yeah, good luck, everybody. Thank you so much for taking time. Paulette, good luck Monday. Congratulations. Joan, thank you so much. You're so inspirational. We appreciate it. And thank all of you. Good luck to the runners.